time to debunk some climate change denial. So the debate about climate change, man-made climate change being real and something that we need to do something about very soon, otherwise we're going to face extreme consequences, has been settled in the academic community. It has been settled across the board. There's like one or two academics who disagree with it, but any like evidence they try to put forward hasn't been peer reviewed and is heavily disagreed upon. And most of the academics who end up putting forth this evidence that man-made climate change isn't real are typically like disgraced by the academic community. You know how like there'll be a random like doctor or something that isn't even doesn't even specialize in the field that'll come out with some bunk study about how like trans people are not valid or something, and then all the transphobes start citing it and using it in their arguments. Meanwhile, the entirety of the rest of the scientific community has like debunked it and has been like, no, this data doesn't say what they're saying it does, or no, they collected the data falsely or in a non in the wrong way. You can't derive a conclusion from this data. You know how that'll happen? Like that one, this is what anti-vaxxers did. There was one study that was done by a disgraced doctor that was no longer, seen in a positive light by the rest of the medical community because of how fucking terrible he was. He made a shitty bunk study that that didn't collect data how you would need to come to the conclusion that he did, and came to the conclusion that vaccines cause autism. And that one study is the study that to this day anti-vaxxers still use. So you can imagine, and this is always conservative. It's always conservatives that engage in this like blatant anti-intellectualism, like science denial, stuff like that. And they do it with climate change as well. They try their hardest to act like there is still a debate among scientists about climate change, or that all the science isn't in yet. This consensus isn't completely made yet. There's still stuff we don't know. Like, they've been trying to do this for a long time. A long time. And today, we're going to be watching a video by John Stossel. I've heard this name before, but I have no idea who the fuck he is. Let's do a little bit of research on John Stossel really fast. What's his deal? He's an American consumer television personality, author, and libertarian pundit. Known for his career on both ABC News and Fox Business Central, Stossel's style combines reporting and commentary. Okay. Let's see, does he have a controversies section? Criticism and controversy. Use an out-of-context clip of Galbraith to convey the notion that Galbraith advocated the adoption by Europe of the free market economics practice by, okay. David Schultz incident. Organic vegetables. Okay. So he seems like he's got a fairly... Progressive organizations have criticized Stossel's work for what they described as a lack of balance of coverage and distortion of facts on his part. For example, Stossel was criticized for a segment on October 11, 1999, show during which he argued that AIDS research has received too much funding, 25 times more than on Parkinson's, which kills more people. Fair pointed out that AIDS had in fact killed more people in the United States in 1999. In a February 2000 Salon feature on Stossel titled Primetime Propagandist, David Macedo wrote that Stossel had a conflict of interest in donating profits from his public speaking engagements to, among others, a nonprofit called Stossel in the Classroom, which includes material for use in schools, some of which uses material made by Stossel. Okay. So he sounds like a piece of shit, like a conservative, sort of demagogue propagandist type. And you can tell that because this video opens with a little segment here, Green Tyranny with John Stossel. Oh boy, how don't you love it whenever you're about to watch a supposedly informative video and the way it's framed, like it's supposed to be academically backed and everything, and it has something as evocative as green tyranny in the first second of it? That's generally how you can tell that what you're listening to is bad. I was actually watching Vosh's stream, or his new video yesterday after my stream, where he's going over that like turf lady that went on Joe Rogan. And you can hear how she speaks. You can tell that she's not actually looking at this issue through an academic lens. She talks about trans activists. Anyone who uses the term trans activists, that's a red flag right there. No one except TERFs and True Scum and other transphobes use that word. They don't. So when you see somebody use the word green or the term green tyranny, that's usually like a big, that's usually a red flag there. But let's get right into the video.
You've heard the news. 97% of scientists agree.
Climate change is getting worse.
Carbon could cost us the planet. Just look out the window.
Look out the window? Because it's a hot day and her tiny piece of the world? How shallow is that?
I forgot. I thought it was 2009 for a second. I feel like when I watched that, I felt like I was being teleported back in time to 2009. Do you remember when the number one, and this is, I guess, is still in use now. I didn't know it was because I thought maybe climate change deniers had advanced to a new Joe. I thought they'd advanced to like a new level of argumentation against science. But hey, how can climate change exist if it's warm outside? Now, granted, that's a bad argument. Though it's just some fucking news lady. Like, she's not a scientist. Also, yes, it is true. 97% of scientists and people within the scientific community all agree that man-made climate change is real. It is being pushed and caused overwhelmingly by human behavior. And if we don't do something about it, there will be dire consequences that will affect people, especially in coastal areas and people in more low-income areas. I mean, we are actually right now seeing some of the side effects of climate change right now. For example, we've got those two massive hurricanes that just came up from the Gulf. That, like, what was it? Like, I think it was described as unsurvivable hurricane that hit Louisiana. And we've got massive forest fires up in the North California. Like, these are all things. And of course, we're seeing droughts and other massive, insane weather events all around the world. These are all things that scientists have been predicting for decades. Fucking decades. But let's see what he has to say. Because climate change, I want to see how advanced climate change and science deniers' arguments have gotten as of late.
And what does it mean when we hear...
The debate is settled.
97%.
97%.
97% of scientists agree.
Of course I believe in global warming.
Pat Michaels is called a climate change denier, but he agrees that the globe is warm.
Let's look at Pat Michaels. Pat Michaels, climate change denial. Let's see. Patrick Michaels, 30 years of climate denial. On September 28, 2018, the Commission of Human Rights of the Philippines was scheduled to hear Patrick Michaels in their ongoing investigation to carbon majors' contributions to climate change and its impacts on Filipinos. Because, yeah, the Philippines, an island nation like that, is not going to handle climate change well. Unreliable then and now, Michaels has been part of shaping public policy and public opinion on climate change since 1984, appearing frequently before the judiciary and legislature. Beyond legal and legislative proceedings, various news programs, including Fox News and even CNN, have also given him a platform to proffer misinformation. Despite revelations of covert fossil fuel funding, okay, so he's funded by oil billionaires. While the consensus over climate change science has grown, Michaels has gone from flat denial of the science to denying the severity of its impacts. So that's how they've evolved. They start downplaying it, ignoring the already deadly and devastating effects felt in the Philippines and many other parts of the world. As more climate lawsuits are filed seeking accountability for fossil fuel companies, Michaels and other deniers' work will likely be pushed to the foreground again and again by his peers and financial backers. We continue to uncover and analyze primary documents of CIS climate files, or CIC's climate files portal, and have recently added a new documentary to our existing Patrick Michaels dossier. The following timeline reflects the complete collection. Oh, so this is just a in-depth history of how his climate change denial, which he has been paid to engage in, has changed and evolved up until 2017. Here it is, Green Tyranny with John Stossel. In 2017, Michaels appeared in a video segment of John Stossel's Green Tyranny series. Green Tyranny originally aired on Fox until Stossel began working with the Koch-funded, the Koch brothers. I'm sure there is no bias there, huh? When it comes to climate change. Reason Foundation. Ooh, the Reason Foundation. Yes. Funded by the Koch brothers. Of course it would be called the Reason Foundation. God, I hate these people. And publishing his content on YouTube. The episode titled The Truth About Climate Change featured interviews with Michaels, former Georgia Institute of Technology professor Judith Curry, and Bill Mumaw, a professor of environmental policy at Tufts University, filling the role of the climate alarmist. Ooh, yeah, I forgot. Climate alarmism. That's what they call it now. Throughout the video, Stossel focused the climate change debate around its impacts, asking, is climate change dangerous? Is it going to harm people? He argued that a few degrees of warming might be good, and that cold waves kill many people than heat wave, or way more people than heat waves. Michaels supported Stossel in this line of argument. He tied the warming climate to the increasing life expectancy in certain parts of the world. We don't really care whether it warms a degree in the next 60 years. It warmed a degree in the last few 100 years. Life expectancy doubled. Yes. But guess what? Basic understanding of science and data, correlation does not equal causation. Do you know what else has happened in the last 100 years? Shit, the polio vaccine. Wasn't the polio vaccine? Was it polio? Hold on. Polio vaccine. When was this invented? Invented. (1914). So a little bit, well, back in 2017, it would have been closer to 100 years, but more or less in the same time period. Since then, we've had the polio vaccine. You guys do know how fucking horrible polio was, right? Polio was like the #1 killer in America for a while. Like, polio was one of, like, the 60 years ago, polio was one of the most feared diseases in the US. Yeah. So, sure, it must be global temperatures rising that has led to an increased life expectancy, not the advent of hundreds of cures and treatments for different diseases. I'm sure it's not that. I'm sure it has to be the rising temperatures, you know? Michaels went on to portray climate alarmists as people pushing issues to compete with each other for your money. He argued that in contrast to previous environmental catastrophes like the population boom or global cooling, the global warming scare has longer legs because it's got more money. Yes, a lot of money behind. I love how he's saying that there's more money behind it when he is funded by the Koch brothers. Yeah, smallpox too. Smallpox was also a big killer, and we got the vaccine for that in about 100 years ago.
97% of scientists agree that global warming is real and people have something to do with it.
Climate change.
Climate change.
No, not that they have something to do with it. That they have a significant amount to do with it. Hold on really quickly, because I know they're going to bring up that we come in and out of like heat waves and cooler, and you know, we're coming out of a minor ice age right now or whatever. Global temperatures chart. So, where's the one that goes back a few thousand years? Projected temperatures back a few thousand years. I think this is it. Nope, that's the 1900s. Back thousands of years. Somebody sent it to me. Yeah, so if we're going to go ahead and look, let's go ahead and look at the, this is from, where is this from? Wikipedia. Okay, cool. Open image, new tab. So these go back to the beginning of us, like back to 1 AD, all right? So you can see temperatures were mostly pretty level for a long time. This is before we had any like big industry or before we had anything like that. The Industrial Revolution hadn't happened yet. And then we had a little ice age, which climate change deniers argue we're coming out of, and that's why we're seeing an increase in climate change. But isn't it interesting, and scientists agree on this, how our current global temperatures average are a bit higher than they were before? Higher than the medieval warm period, higher than before that even, going back thousands of years. Interesting. What else happened in the 1800s and in the early 1900s that might have resulted in our global temperatures rising so much? What do you think happened? Hey, does anybody in chat, any thonkers in chat, know what happened around this time that might have caused this? What could have done it? What could have done that? I don't. Yeah, I have no idea. What could have caused such a rapid, unprecedented rise in average global temperatures? Bonkers, guys. I don't know. So, for those of you guys that are, brain dead, which I assume none of you in my chat are, because you're all fucking five heads, because you watch me. The advent of the Industrial Revolution basically resulted in humanity burning way more fossil fuel than they ever had before. We're using coal, and we're using much later on oil. But for then it was coal. The steam engine, which used coal to run, was a big invention. A lot of industry, a lot of machines burned coal and fossil fuels, and we've only been using more fossil fuels as we become more proficient at extracting, oil, crude from the ground, and using that, and creating carbon, putting that out into the atmosphere, exacerbating the greenhouse effect, that we've seen massive rises in temperatures. There is no debate within the academic community about this. Never let these people trick you into thinking it's not settled. It is 100% settled. These people, clean coal, that's a good meme. This is 100% settled.
Changes.
Temperatures up 4 degrees since what's called the Little Ice Age hundreds of years ago, and up 2 degrees over the past century.
The real question.
We looked at the entire chart of this. Notice how this chart only shows back to the 1500s. Yeah, I'm sure it looks a lot less crazy if you only show back to the 1500s instead of what it's looked like before that for thousands of years. Because this is the coolest point it's been since the last ice age, the actual ice age. This is more of a cooling period. Like the last actual ice age, this is the coolest it got. And it has been spiking, and now it's the hottest it's been since, I think it was since the fucking meteor struck that killed off the dinosaurs.
Hundreds of years ago, and up 2 degrees over the past century.
The real question is it dangerous? Is it going to harm people?
Exactly.
There's not a 97% consensus.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is a consensus on what the outcomes of climate change will be and how it'll harm people. There is a treatise of fucking studies and consensus that global sea levels rising will decimate coastal cities, and that the most likely to be impacted people are going to be people in low-income areas, because people in low-income areas don't have the capital and the money to be able to afford the damage that things like, stronger storms, rising sea levels, all of those things will cause to their property, and they aren't able to move. They don't have the money to move out of the way, and they don't have the infrastructure in their areas to hold back the effects of climate change. Also, yes, the guy that he's talking to, as we just read, God, I'm glad we read that article. The guy that he's talking to is on trial is being like tried by the Philippines for his lies and deception because of all the terrible impact that climate change is having on the Philippines right now, an island nation which is expected to be almost completely wiped out by rising sea levels. Damn, glad we read about it.
On that?
Of course there's not.
There's no consensus on fear-mongering like this.
If we lose the ice caps, you know how high the water will be? It would come up to the Statue of Liberty's elbow.
But even the UN's computer...
There literally is consensus on that. Oh god, I love that. I love how they're gonna like show an image. I think this is from what's that movie? The movie where the guy is like a climate scientist and he's trying to get the boomers and the government to understand climate changes. Day After Tomorrow. Yeah. They're showing a scene from Day After Tomorrow to try and present it as though climate scientists are climate alarmists. This is what they think will happen. And no, it's probably not going to look much like The Day After Tomorrow. Probably not. It's probably not going to be just out of nowhere a massive fucking tsunami comes and wipes out New York City. That's probably not going to be what happens. Oh, there it is. Okay. Get up. That's probably not how it's going to happen. What's going to happen is a combination of average sea levels rising, which means on a normal day, the sea level will get higher. And during things such as storms, during storm surge and whatnot, we are not going to be prepared for the effects of this. Now, by the time the ice caps have melted, yes, the water will be up roughly this high. Well, a little higher. It'll actually be settled around the Statue of Liberty's elbow. But it's not going to happen out of nowhere like this. It's going to slowly rise. Streets in New York, shops, towns, floor by floor, are going to get flooded every time a storm comes. Eventually, the water's going to rise above that on a normal basis. And that might not sound scary if it's going to happen slowly and not all at once. Because I'll admit, it does sound a lot scarier if it happens out of nowhere, a big tsunami hits New York City. But the reason why it's scarier that it doesn't happen like this is because then there's a certain point where there's nothing we can do about it. No climate scientists are arguing that if we don't do anything about our impact on the planet within 20 years, that this is where we'll be in 20 years. What they're arguing is if we don't do anything about it in the next 20 years, this is inevitable. It may take 100 years for us to get to this point. But if we don't do something big about it in the next 20 years, there's no stopping it. We'll pass the point of no return. That's what they argue. And I'm pretty sure that this guy is going to try to strawman climatologists, and the overwhelming consensus is thinking that in 20 years, this is what's going to happen.
Models don't predict the 20 feet that Neil deGrasse Tyson and Al Gore predict. We invited them and 20 other alarmists to make their points on this program. Only one, Bill Mumo, agreed. He worries about
the hot car effect, where you put your car in the sun, it's 70 degrees outside, you get in your car, it's 140, how did it happen? That's exactly what's happening with the atmosphere.
the climate models that
Let me here. I know a lot about climate change. I've done a lot of research on it. Basically, what happens is we've got our atmosphere that's around the Earth that's held there by gravity. Assuming you're not a flat earther, which I imagine many climate change deniers are, the atmosphere is held in place by gravity, right? And our atmosphere does a lot to take in sunlight, which is what keeps us all going. We need the sun. All life comes from the sun. Plants need it for photosynthesis. Mammals and whatnot usually eat plants, and smaller mammals eat them. Smaller animals eat them. Yeah, it's the circle of life. It all starts with the sun. So praise the sun and all that. You need the sun to come in. However, the problem is a certain amount of heat from the sun is also radiated back into space, an appropriate amount. Now, there are a lot of different things that are referred to as greenhouse gases. Water vapor is one of, if not the most abundant greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. Now, if it's just water vapor in the atmosphere, this is fine. This usually isn't a huge issue. However, carbon dioxide is carbon and carbon dioxide, carbon in all of its forms in the atmosphere, are much more effective greenhouse gases. We're putting out more and more of it. and it doesn't escape the atmosphere. And plants can only do so much to, process it into oxygen. Not to mention deforestation is a huge issue, so we're getting less plants. But regardless of that, even if we had a planet that was covered in trees and we weren't doing any deforestation, as if we kept on the current path that we're on, we would still be putting out too much carbon into the atmosphere to counteract the effects that plants are having, right? When you look at studies on climate change, the 97% number looks inadequate. Of 13,950 studies, 24 reject climate change. Yeah, it's actually that's pretty big consensus. Yeah, so there's less than 25 studies that debunk climate change. And many of those studies either don't say what people think they say, or they are like, the data is collected in a way that just, it's not like peer reviewed or anything like that, right? So now we have this issue where we're having the greenhouse effect. If you've ever gone into a greenhouse, you go inside and it's a lot warmer because the glass lets heat in, but doesn't let much heat out, right? It doesn't let much cool air from outside in either. And that's what's happening inside our atmosphere right now. This is the overwhelming consensus. They're framing this guy as a climate change, or a climate, what's the word that he was using? Alarmist, a climate alarmist, but yeah. Yeah, one section of Vosh's research doc has 2 times the amount of studies as the entirety of the studies that climate change deniers point to. Don't worry, Xander Hall, in 20 years, Elon Musk in private industry will have us all on Mars. That's basically their goal. People like Elon Musk want humanity to go to Mars so they can build resorts on Mars so all the rich people can go there and run industry and live in their billionaire fucking space mansions on Mars, while all the poor people and all the working class has to stay on Earth, toiling away, making them more money, and experiencing the effects of climate change. I really like the way Elon Musk doesn't give a fuck about like the world being a better place. I don't think. I think he cares about his ego and people seeing him as like the real life Tony Stark. That's all he cares about.
That got the government so excited have been totally wrong so far.
Well, I would say the climate models are actually better than economic models.
Well, they're both bad.
Okay, I wouldn't object to that conclusion.
But then why should we turn our lives upside down based on bad models?
Because
turning our lives upside down. Also, I'm pretty sure he's lying about everything he said there. I don't feel like Googling it and proving him wrong here. So turning our lives upside down. Probably the best form of energy to switch to is a mix of renewable energy, such as solar and wind, and maybe a little geothermal, and nuclear. Nuclear energy seems to be the way to go. Nuclear is pretty fucking great. Gotta love those thorium reactors, Gotta love thorium. Yeah, this kind of does look like Keck Weight. No, but nobody's life is being flipped upside down. Now, liberals will do things like they'll be like, "Oh, you got to use, use the special light bulbs, recycle, do all these things." Like, those are good and all. It's good to personally in your life limit your carbon emissions. That's nice. That's great. However, this problem isn't being caused by working class people leaving their lights on all day and driving cars that put out, this does actually contribute a lot, and driving cars that put off a lot of carbon and burn a lot of fossil fuels. 100 companies, I believe. Hold on, let's see. It's let me check. I think the study is 100 companies responsible for climate change. Yep, here it is. Here's from The Guardian. Just 100 companies responsible for 71% of global emissions, study says. The only people flipping their lives upside down are these 100 companies. Fuck them. Get into renewable energy. California produced so much renewable energy back in 2019 that they literally gave it to another state. They literally paid, I think it was Arizona or Utah or something, to take the extra energy they were producing from solar and wind farms for free. They paid them to take it because they had so much extra. Why not just switch to renewable energy? Arizona, it was Arizona, yeah. Just 100 companies have been the source of more than 70% of greenhouse gas emissions since 1988, according to a new report. The Carbon Emissions Report, PDF, pinpoints how a relatively small set of fossil fuel producers may hold the key to systemic change on carbon emissions, says Pedro Faria, technical director at environmental nonprofit CDP, which published the report in collaboration with the Climate Accountability Institute. So yeah, we are not flipping our lives upside down. The only people that have to flip their lives upside down are the fucking billionaires that pay this piece of shit.
As last time carbon dioxide was this high in the past, sea levels were maybe 20 feet higher than they are now.
That was back before humans existed.
It will resume warming, but you don't really care whether it warms a degree in the next...
Wait, what about humans being around? Wait, that's why we should be worried, because now we're around for it. Wait, the last time there was a massive extinction event on Earth was 65 million years ago. Humans weren't even around back then. The dinosaurs got killed off. Why should we care about the meteor coming to Earth now? The last time something like this happened, humans weren't even around. That's basically the equivalent of what we're getting here. That's what we're getting here right now. Why should we care? We weren't around back then. Because we're here now. And last time, carbon emissions were up this high in the atmosphere. Sea levels rose an average of 20 feet. Let's go ahead and look at places that would be affected by average sea... Hold on, let's see, actually. Map of rising sea levels, climate change. I want to see an image of it, just to visualize it for you all. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Come on, there we go. Look at that. Whew. Everything white will be underwater. Yeah. Well, we'll see a lot less Florida Man reports because I mean, this is okay. I'm fine with this. If it was a little higher here, I would be fine. Like, let's just honestly, let's give Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi some nice beaches. You know? Let's just make Florida ocean, okay? I'm fine with that. New York City won't survive. LA? Much of LA would probably be underwater, but as you get up into, like, the mountains, you might be okay. But, no, this is fucking significant. New Orleans would be underwater. I mean, we know what happened to New Orleans during Katrina, right? I mean, imagine that. But way fucking worse. Always, though. So, we would definitely be affected by it. I think it's safe to say we would be affected by it pretty badly.
Next 60 years. It warmed a degree in the last 100 years. Life expectancy doubled.
A few degrees warming might be good.
It might be if you, depending where you are.
Cold waves kill many more people than heat waves.
Well, I don't know. How many tens of thousands of people died in Europe in 2003 in the heat wave?
Tens of thousands did.
I like how they cut them off. I like how they cut them off immediately because they're allowed to edit it however they like to make themselves look as good as possible. This is the problem with propaganda. You can never like look at it on face level. That was like one of the most explicit cuts I've ever seen in the middle of someone making an argument. That would be like me if I was debating somebody and they were making a good argument and halfway through their sentence I just decided to mute them in the call so they couldn't finish their sentence and then just respond to what like the first half of what they were able to say. That's the equivalent of what we just got right there. So for some people, things getting hotter might be better. So yeah, for people who are able to afford moving to places where they won't be affected, sure. However, the problem is that climate change and rising sea levels aren't the only thing we have to worry about. Climate change is also going to affect agriculture very, very negatively. We all need agriculture, okay? If we can't grow food, that's going to affect everybody, no matter how far inland, no matter how far up you live. Unless you're a fucking millionaire or billionaire with your underground vault growing plants and shit like that, with your servants and your underground pool. Did you see the, hold on. They vaults for millionaires. They're actually vaults that millionaires have made that are in preparation for like doomsday events that are like underground. Let's see. Here's one by Business Insider. Fuck off. CNN. Hopefully CNN isn't a bitch about this. Here it is. Billionaire bunkers, how the 1% are preparing for the apocalypse. So yeah, this is where the billionaires and millionaires will be hiding out, assuming we don't have good enough colonies on Mars. This is all underground. These are underground bunkers for these. This one's not above ground, I don't think. Or this one's above ground. This one's underground, probably. Yeah. They're going to be fine. These people will be fine. The 1%. But us, we're going to be left out to dry, literally. It's going to be hot as fuck.
Did die. Heat can kill. But many more people die from cold. The CDC says heat kills 600 Americans a year.
Guess what? This is a common it's cold outside argument, right? So places that are not supposed to get cold will get very cold. Notice how we've been getting more, like while the Earth has been getting warmer and warmer just on average, and this has been causing ice to melt, especially during the summer. During the winter, things get really fucking cold, way colder than they're supposed to be. This is an argument that climate change deniers use, that we've had some of the most extreme cold winters we've ever had. But then we get some of the most extreme hot summers we've ever had. It's making weather or climate more erratic. It's extreme temperatures. So during the summer, people get to die from extreme heat, and during the winter, people get to die from extreme cold. Now, the Earth will, on average, still raise in temperature, and that's why the sea caps will continue to melt, and the sea levels, or the ice caps will continue to melt, and the sea level will go up. But even if you're inland, you got to deal with erratic temperature change. Global warming. There's a reason why they don't use global warming anymore. Just as a coverall word for it. They use climate change because it's a more broad, more accurate term for it. Global warming is simply a symptom of climate change.
Cold kills more than twice that many.
This budget requests $1.1 billion to address climate change.
An agency doesn't get money going in front of a congressional committee and say, you know, my issue, it's really not a problem. You ought to give the money to somebody else. No, instead, issues compete with each other for your money. And so you have to scare them.
I just want you all to remember, these two are being paid by the Koch brothers. This guy's been on PragerU, I know. Just remember, these guys are being paid by the Koch brothers. That's all you need to know for this part. They're being paid tons of money by the Koch brothers to do this. This has been confirmed. And they've tried to keep it a secret.
We have to act in this decade.
As someone who gets paid to do research, I'm really excited. I'm going to go home and have fun. And so, to summarize, we have much scientific confidence that warming is contributing to sea level rise and other changes.
I've lived through.
Yes, a researcher that gets paid to study climate is excited to learn more about climate. You do realize that people acknowledging climate change exists doesn't make him get paid more, right? Do you know how researchers get paid? They get paid in grants to study things. You do realize that there's a consensus on an issue. People who study that issue make less money because it's hard, then they can't get grants for it, because why would you study something that's already settled? I mean, I wouldn't expect people who are blatantly anti-intellectual to understand how research and academia works when it comes to how they get paid. But they don't get paid based on their shit being correct unless they get paid to speak at conferences and stuff because they make some massive breakthrough. They get paid in grants to study unknown shit. That's how it works. When there's a settled consensus on something, you don't really get grants for it.
8 environmental apocalypses: the population bomb, acid rain, the ozone hole, global cooling, you name it. The global warming.
You know acid rain's a thing, right? You know this is like a thing that happens in the world. This isn't like, oh, it's gonna happen, and like this is a thing that like you can, like it's happening. Like it's, you can go see acid rain in places where it tends to happen. Yeah, there's gonna be even worse acid rain that actually corrodes shit that isn't just limestone and skin. Not to mention what we're seeing right now with acid rain that's really causing a lot of issues, and we've been monitoring it for a while, is I think it's called ocean acidification. Basically what's happening is animals such as crabs and stuff like that with chitinous shells, so their shells are dissolving from the ocean acidification. Same goes for coral.
Scare has longer legs because it's got more money.
That also gives climate alarmists a reason to squash dissent.
The climate change deniers suggest there's still a debate over the science. There is not.
I bought what they were saying.
Judith Curry is a climate scientist at Georgia Tech. She once agreed with the scaremongers.
Ooh, Georgia Curry, or wait, what?
They were saying.
Judith Curry is a climate...
Judith Curry, climate scientist, ooh. Let's see. Ah, yes. Judith Curry retires, citing craziness of climate change. How much do you want to bet that she like published some like bunk study and was given the option to step down and retire, rather than being laughed out of her field? How much do you want to bet that's what happened? She occasionally mocks what she calls climate alarmists, who say time is almost out unless humanity weans itself off fossil fuels. In her blog and on Twitter, she has also criticized some of the scientists, including Pennsylvania State University climatologist Michael Mann and Harvard University climate historian Naomi, I can't pronounce that, who have become leading voices for climate action. She has testified in front of Congress, boosted by politicians who use her work to argue that environmental regulations and a scaling down of fossil fuel use will be ineffective. Her work is frequently invoked by climate skeptics and denialists. Congressional Democrats displeased with her conclusions have investigated the source of her funding. Curry actually believes... Ah, yes. Oof. Okay, so she's like the... Who's the guy? John Murray. She's like John Murray, the guy who put out the bell curve. She's like the climatologist John Murray. That's nice.
Scientist at Georgia Tech. She once agreed with the scaremongers.
What changed?
Well, Climategate.
Emails reveal a plot among the world's top climate scientists.
The group of esteemed scientists.
I'm not taking anything having to do with Sean Hannity, okay?
Were strategizing to squash their opponents. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. Why should I believe this instead of my own judgment? What scientists actually agree on is a very narrow slice of things. Yes, temperatures have been increasing overall for the last several hundred years.
Let's check something. Why do I get vibes that she'd drink a glass of pesticide fast? I don't know. Hold on. Let's see. Climategate on Climategate, factcheck.org. In late November 2009, more than 1,000 emails between scientists at the Climate Research Unit of the UK's University of East Anglia were stolen and made public by an as yet unnamed hacker. Climate skeptics are claiming that they show scientific misconduct that amounts to the complete fabrication of man-made global warming. We find that to be unfounded. The messages, which span 13 years, show a few scientists in a bad light, being rude or dismissive. An investigation is underway, but there's still plenty of evidence that the Earth is getting warmer and that humans are largely responsible. Some critics say the emails negate the conclusions of a 2007 report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, but the IPCC report relied on data from a large number of sources, of which CRU was only one. Emails being cited as smoking guns have been misrepresented. For instance, one email that refers to hiding the decline isn't talking about a decline in actual temperatures as measured at weather stations. These continued to rise. In 2009 may turn out to be one of the fifth warmest years ever recorded. The decline actually refers to a problem with recent data from tree rings. Analysis. Skeptic claims this trove of emails shows the scientists at the UK Research Centre were engaging in evidence tampering, and they are portraying the affair as a major scandal. Climategate. Saudi Arabian climate negotiator Mohammed al-Saban went so far as to tell the BBC, it appears from the details of the scandal that there is no relationship whatsoever between human activities and climate change. I wonder what Saudi Arabia... What would Saudi Arabia have that might incentivize them to try and be a little bit skeptical about fossil fuel burning being bad for the Earth? Is there anything about... Do we know anything about Saudi Arabia that might make us wonder? Yeah, calling these people skeptics is too generous. It's like calling flat earthers globe Earth skeptics. He said that he expected news of the emails to disrupt the UN Climate Summit in Copenhagen this month. An article from the conservative-leaning Canada Free Press, oh god, they always have these fucking names, claims that the stolen files are proof of a deliberate fraud and the greatest deception in history. So yeah, there's an entire fucking fact check. There's an entire, cited and everything, entire factcheck.org entry about how Climategate is bullshit. Nice, good to get that one out of the way.
No doubt.
And that carbon dioxide does act to warm the planet. But there's no agreement as to whether warming is dangerous or not.
For saying that,
you were one of the targets of the congressman saying, show us where you get your money.
Yeah. I was one of the seven.
No, she's being investigated. At least back when that article was made, she was under investigation. Like, not, oh, show us your money. Like, unironically, under investigation. And you know she's getting paid by somebody. These two guys are. The guys that we saw earlier, we looked it up. They're being funded by the Koch brothers. Koch brother. Yeah, you know she's getting paid by some fucking conservative dark money groups. You fucking know.
Climate skeptics were branded heretics in order to reveal all their sources of funds. Curry abandoned science.
This is after praising me and pushing me a few years ago as, the prestigious scientist.
You have wrong
whatever.
opinions now.
Yeah. I was trying to be honest as a scientist. It was very unpopular with a lot of my colleagues. They were trying to squash people who disagreed with them.
And they've succeeded.
I get emails from people all the time who wish they could speak out.
What are they worried about?
Losing their jobs?
It's dangerous to dissent when climate change is something politicians address with religious zeal.
This was the moment.
Religious zeal. Hey guys, the Syrian civil war, acknowledging that's an issue that's going on right now. Religious zeal. The fight on how bad ISIS is and other terrorist organizations. That's, when you go against that, that's religious zeal. You know what Vosh said about researchers who make controversy their entire identity? Yeah, there's a lot of money in just basically being a researcher or a scientist or whatever, and just coming out with some bunk study, getting laughed off the stage for it, and then being like, I got canceled, and it becomes your whole fucking your new career.
When the rise of the oceans began to slow and our planet began to heal.
Admit it. It's a religion. The head of the United Nations Climate Panel said it's his religion.
When you emit greenhouse gas...
How much you want to bet that quote is taken out of context and they said it sarcastically? Why would they not show a clip of it? The protection of planet Earth is my religion. Do we feel the need to look the only good religion? True. Do you feel like we should look into it? Do you guys think we can safely say this is probably misrepresented, and we don't need to go look for him actually saying it? Hey, Ethan. Remember to read the Green New Deal regularly. It's our holy scripture.
You emit greenhouse gases. You feel like you're committing a sin?
I suppose if I were a preacher, I'd say we're all sinners, but there's redemption out in the future.
What is redemption?
My wife and I decided to build a zero net energy house in New England. It's completely solar.
But it's expensive.
Basically, it's tax-free money for me.
Yeah, taxpayers subsidize you and me. I did it too. Hey,
yep.
What's fair about that? That's just...
Wait, why would you be against having solar panels to power your house to lower your electricity bill? That's good. That's good. We don't need tax. We don't. So, fuck. Okay. Do you guys know who Stossel is? Liz, aka Stossel, on Twitch. Cool lady. She tax pilled me. She sent me a ton of fucking sources about taxation, and I read it. And I know Ethan's gonna read about this because he's a libertarian, but we don't really rely all that much on taxes from utilities, such as electricity and whatnot. It's mostly income tax. Taxes you pay at the end of the year, or at the beginning of each year, technically. That's mostly where most of the government gets its money from. And sales tax to a degree. Property tax as well. There's tons of other different types of taxes, but still, I don't see how this is being framed as a bad thing.
It hurts the poor. They ask all these Nobel Prize winners, what do we need?
No, it doesn't. There's no substantial harm that's going to be caused if we have a good taxation policy for income tax on the wealthy and the middle class. That's going to be affected by people having solar panels and lowering their electric bill with it. So they pay less. That's not hurting the poor. Also, you're being paid by the Koch brothers. You're a conservative pundit. You fucking hate the poor. Don't virtue signal. He's virtue signaling right now. This is what this is. This is right-wing virtue signaling. They will endlessly shit on the poor and minorities and whatnot, but then whenever they see the opportunity to, they'll virtue signal about how they actually like the poor and how it's the left that actually hates the poor. Oh God, being paid by billionaires and talking about, oh, you know what? You know how else the poor are gonna suffer? The poor are gonna suffer when the sea levels rise and climate disasters become more common. It is also the overwhelming consensus that low-income areas at home and abroad will be the ones that'll face the harshest symptoms of climate change, and they are right now, and it's gonna get worse.
Need to do to help the world.
Yeah.
Addressing climate change was way down on the list. 1 million people die from dysentery.
Yes, absolutely.
Dirty water, horrible things that are killing people now.
Yep. And that would be cheap to fix, by the way. Cheaper than
we should do that before we worry about global warming.
But it's not an either-or thing.
Yeah, it's not an either-or thing. You could do either. You could do both. Getting everybody that needs it clean water is not that expensive. It's really not. We can do both. We can do both.
But government action is an either-or thing. We don't have endless money. If we want to help people, we ought to do what really helps.
Well, there we go. Maybe we ought to tax billionaires more. Yeah, there is not really a lack of resources. There's a lack of a proper system to get those resources to people. And the reason why it's an either-or thing is because of our shitty fucking government. The way our governmental system works is we've got a two-party system, and generally it's either the Democrats, who are pretty center-leaning, or the Republicans, which are pretty damn right-leaning generally. Republicans don't give a shit about poor people, and the Democrats have to pretend to care about poor people for their voter base, but they don't really do all that much. Didn't the Flint, Michigan... Hold on. Flint, Michigan... Yeah. This all started in 2014 under Obama, a Democratic president. So yeah, it's not just the Democrats or the Republicans. It's our shitty fucking system. Hey, maybe if we had Bernie, huh? Anyway, climate change deniers are subhuman pieces of shit, in my humble opinion. Okay? Never listen to what these people have to say. The science isn't on their side. The facts aren't on their side. They're just as wrong as flat earthers, as transphobes, and all of those things. And anti-vaxxers. It's all the same shit. It's all anti-science. It's all anti-intellectualism. It's all fucking propaganda being propped up by demagogues who are funded millions of dollars by billionaires. Never fucking believe these people. It's not hard to debunk all of their claims. We just did it live with this video. We went and we did research on the people talking, found out who's paying them. We looked at the things they mentioned, such as Climategate, and saw how unsubstantiated it is. It's not that hard. None of these things are that hard. Don't fall for these people's bullshit. They're being paid to spread bullshit, and they make a lot of money from it.